Well, if you've ever envisioned yourself being an entrepreneur, there may be no better time than now to start pursuing that dream. Earlier, I visited with two entrepreneurial experts, Scott Klososky and Mike Morris, two keynote speakers at this year's Entrepreneurs Conference about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. So, Mike, I'm an entrepreneur and I've got a great idea. What do I do now?
Well, Rob, it's important that you not get too hung up on the idea. The idea needs to be unique, it needs to be different. At the same time, the idea will emerge. The idea will change as you adapt over time. It is important to think in terms of a business plan, not so much for banks or other people, but for yourself, because that becomes a testing ground as you flesh out your idea, as you adapt it, as you move from an idea to something that could be a sustainable business.
So, Scott, let's talk a little bit about funding. When does that need to come into the formula?
Well, I think you need to start thinking about funding right away. I mean, as soon as you have a great idea, if you're going to engage now and actually start a business, we know from history that one of the prime reasons that businesses don't make it is from lack of resources, or they're not properly funded. They don't have the proper amount of capital set up. So I think right from the get-go, you've got to have some concept of how are we going to pay for the things we're going to need to pay for to get this off the ground.
So, Scott, let's talk a little bit more about funding. You've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. How did you do it?
Well, I started off, I think, like most entrepreneurs, building the first business on just using my credit cards and the amount of money I had in my savings account. So that was how we started the first business, and then struggled in that first business to get to a point where we actually could borrow a little bit of money from a bank. By the time I got to the second and third business, I was able to start using venture capital. So, I got to the point where I could raise $1 million and then $3 million to move a business down the line. And then once I'd sold a company and had some success, then I was, institutionally credible. And so, from that point, now I have lots of options. But in the early days, it was really scratching and clawing with the resources that I just had available to myself to try to get something off the ground.
So, Dr. Morris, how important is marketing and getting a venture off the ground?
Well, marketing is critically important, Rob. What a lot of entrepreneurs forget is you're not in business when you have premises or you have money. You're in business when you have a customer. And marketing begins and ends with customers. A common mistake entrepreneurs make is they think everybody's a customer. The need to segment markets, to target more carefully, to have a clear idea of who you're serving and who you're not really serving is vital, especially when you have lean resources.
Is there a certain personality that may be better suited to become an entrepreneur than another one?
Well, I don't believe that personality is probably the most important thing that dictates. I think it's probably the heart of the entrepreneur. I think we see lots of different personality types that have been successful and lots of different personality types that have failed. I think, if you want to look at something that's really going to, give you a good a flavor of whether somebody's going to succeed, it's much more the heart of the entrepreneur. Do they have the discipline? Do they have the determination? Can they get up when they've been knocked down? Those are the things that really define, are you going to be successful as an entrepreneur? I agree with Mike. There are guys that are successful in the technology industry that have almost no social skills at all. Frankly, they're geeks. They're more comfortable with the machine than they are with people. They don't have what you would think of as a real outgoing personality. But what they do have is incredible talent at programming, and then they've got the heart. They just have the heart to get up off the ground over and over again and stick with something until they make it a success.
Scott said something very important here, and that is that if you really boil all this down, all the issues about marketing and operations and business plans, it really comes down to entrepreneurship is where passion meets discipline. And if you couple tenacity with that, you've got a formula that can potentially create something special.
From a broader perspective, Dr. Morris, how important is entrepreneurship for our country's economy?
I can't overstate how important it is, Rob. There is no economic future in this country or in this state without entrepreneurship. We need to start to realize that economic development is entrepreneurial development. Entrepreneurs create 85% of the new jobs in the country. They are the source of value creation, wealth creation, new products, new patents. This is the dynamic. This is where it's at, and this is where we need to spend much more of our public policy focus as well as our focus in our schools, all levels of society.
Now, Scott, you've made your living in the tech fields. How much opportunity is there?
Obviously, technology is one of the hotter fields for entrepreneurism, and there's some interesting reasons for that. You know, first of all, anyone that can learn to program can sit down and find a solution or find something that a piece of software could solve that hasn't been solved before, and you know, in their bedroom they could spend hours and develop a product. So, you know, the neat thing about technology is you don't have to build a factory, you don't have to buy a bunch of equipment. You know, you just have to assemble a few people that have programming talent, and you can spin up a business. And so, you know, that's the wonderful piece of technology. I think also there sometimes tends to be a little more capital available for technology because investors have found that technology is an area that if you win, you can often win big. So, so I think there's a ton of opportunity in technology. And I would extend what Mike said. I absolutely agree that on a national basis, entrepreneurism is important. If you combine what you just asked about technology, I would say for the United States to really prosper, we have to move to an innovation economy. And technology is a great facilitator of moving to an innovation economy. In other words, you know, we probably aren't going to be the manufacturing hub of the world going forward, but we absolutely can be the innovation hub of the world.